There are worlds that bleed screams into the void, places where mercy is a myth and light survives only through defiance. Imagine, just for a moment, the birth of something alien within that darkness. A single man, torn from another reality, a world of dungeons, monarchs, and shadows dropped without warning into the nightmare galaxy of the 41st millennium. His name was Sung Jin Woo, and where he walks, shadows follow. The galaxy of the Imperium knows no peace, no respite, no forgiveness. Every breath is a war prayer whispered to a dying emperor. Yet on one forgotten world, where the sands are black and the skies boil with unending storm, something impossible occurs. A gate opens where none should exist, and from it steps not a demon nor a warp-spawned horror, but a human or something close enough to wear the name. His eyes burn with violet light, and his presence tears, the veil between the warp and the living realm. The story that follows is not recorded in any Imperial archive. It exists only as a rumor, a half-remembered data fragment whispered through corrupted Vox channels. But if it is true, if Sung Jin Woo truly walked among the armies of the Imperium, then the galaxy may never have been the same again. When he awoke, there was no sky, only metal. Rusted beams stretched above him like the ribs of a god long dead, and the air burned with the tang of promethium. Sung Jin Woo rose slowly, his breath shallow, his mind scraping against the silence like a blade on stone. The system did not greet him. No blue window, no familiar voice, no pulse of mana through his veins. Only stillness and the grinding of distant gears. He stood on a platform choked in ash and oil, surrounded by ruins that whispered of labor and death. Towering structures reached into darkness, crowned with pipes that bled steam in long ghostly sighs. Strange sigils, the Imperial Aquila, worn and half-reaced, adorned the walls. Whatever this place had once been, it was now a graveyard of machines. Jin Woo tried to summon a shadow. His hand trembled, reaching into the dark, but the energy felt thick, distorted. The air here was heavy with something unnatural, as if reality itself had teeth. He felt it then, faint but real, a flicker of connection deep below. His soldiers were struggling to manifest, clawing at the barrier that separated them from this world. He forced the command through the void, a silent roar that echoed across dimensions. The ground quivered. A shape began to emerge. The first shadow rose, staggering as if choking on the air. Its form was unstable, a soldier of darkness flickering between existence and annihilation. Jin Woo's eyes narrowed. Even the shadows, forged from death itself, were not immune to the corruption saturating this place. He steadied it with his will, anchoring it through sheer dominance. The entity knelt, trembling, awaiting orders. "Scout," Jin Woo whispered. His voice carried no echo, swallowed instantly by the hum of unseen generators. The shadow melted into the floor, vanishing into the maze of rust and dust. He took a step forward, and the world responded. A deep, mechanical groan reverberated through the structure. The floor beneath him vibrated, dust falling from overhead pipes like old snow. From the far end of the hall, something moved, heavy, deliberate, metallic. Red light flared in the distance, sweeping through the darkness like the gaze of a predator. Figures emerged from the gloom. They were not soldiers in armor, not in the sense he knew. They were constructs of flesh and machine, their bodies pierced by wires and steel, their faces locked in permanent obedience. Servitors, their mechanical limbs clicked in rhythm as they advanced. carrying tools that might as well have been weapons. Behind them came a voice, monotone, filtered through static. Unauthorized presence detected in Manufacturum Sector 9. Genetic signature unregistered. Commencing analysis. The speaker was not human, at least not entirely. Its face was hidden beneath a bronze mask etched with cog-like runes, eyes glowing with artificial light, robes of crimson draped over metallic limbs, the mark of the Adeptus Mechanicus. A tech-priest Jin Woo didn't move. The priest extended a mechadendrite tipped with a scanning array, its lenses worry. The servitors circled him, weapons ready. State designation? State allegiance, the machine voice demanded. For a heartbeat, Jin Woo said nothing. Then the purple glow in his eyes flared, cutting through the haze. You wouldn't understand. The tech priest paused. Define anomaly. The servitors lunged. Jin Woo moved, like a storm unbound. His hands slashed through the air, and the nearest servitor crumpled, its body folding under invisible weight. The others fired, bolts of energy carving molten scars into the walls. Jin Woo leapt, shadows erupting from beneath his feet, unstable, distorted, but furious. They tore through metal and flesh alike, devouring light. The tech priest staggered back, stuttering binaric prayers. His vox grill screamed fragments of canticles to the omniscient. Unclean. Warp-born entity detected. Jin Woo landed amidst the wreckage, the smell of ozone and burning oil thick in the air. His eyes flickered toward the fallen priest, who trembled on the floor. Half-machine fingers reaching for a data slate. Jin Woo crouched beside him. Tell me where I am. Through static, the voice rasped. You are on Viharian X, Forge World, property of the Adeptus Mechanicus. By decree of Mars, your existence is heresy. Jin Woo looked around the endless factory stretching into the void. Then this galaxy, he murmured, has no idea what heresy truly means. The priest tried to respond, but a shadow surged forward, silencing him forever. Jin Woo rose, the glow in his eyes dimming. The system was gone, but something older was awakening in its place. Instinct, hunger and curiosity, and far above, unseen through the choking smog, sensors blinked awake. His arrival had been noticed. The first sound to break the silence after the slaughter was the hiss of ancient machinery returning to life. A lattice of warning lights pulsed crimson across the factory walls, like veins filling with blood after centuries of sleep. Somewhere deep within the structure, a klaxon began to wail, low, mournful, mechanical. Jin Woo stood amidst the carnage, listening to the rhythm of it, and knew the planet itself was waking. He turned toward the shattered body of the tech priest. The red robes had burned away in patches, revealing the gleam of steel beneath what was left of human skin. Jin Woo studied the craftsmanship, the mixture of devotion and monstrosity, and felt the same quiet awe he had once reserved for high-level dungeon bosses. These beings had fused religion and machinery into one. Every motion, every word, every breath seemed a prayer to a god of circuits and flame. It was grotesque and beautiful. The air carried the scent of burning oil and static. And beneath that, something else, a pulsing vibration he could feel in his bones. It reminded him of mana, but twisted, hollow, like an echo of power that had forgotten its source. He reached out, drawing it into himself. It resisted, fighting him, biting into his veins like fire. For a moment, his vision blurred. His shadow soldiers flickered, destabilized. their forms half lost to the unseen distortion. "Adapt," he whispered through gritted teeth, and the shadows obeyed. Slowly, they adjusted, their edges stabilizing as they absorbed the planet's hostile resonance. They were learning to exist here, reshaping themselves to the laws of this brutal reality. The klaxons grew louder. Jin Woo could hear heavy footsteps echoing through the corridors, squads approaching. He extended his senses, letting his will drift outward. The factory was immense, a labyrinth of pipes and furnaces, a metallic cathedral that seemed to breathe. Every level trembled with approaching life. Skittery patrols, servitor clusters, drone swarms, and above all, an intelligence pulsed within the data architecture, cold, methodical. Watching him through 1,000 lenses, he had no map, no system to guide him, but his instincts had never failed. "We move," he said softly. His shadow soldiers melted into the walls, spreading like smoke. Jin Woo stepped into the gloom, his boots striking sparks from the grated floor. He followed the pulse of the world, the hum of power conduits, the drone of ancient reactors. It led him deeper, toward the heart of the manufactorum. Along the way, he passed the remains of machines older than memory, titanic assembly lines lined with skeletal conveyor belts coated in rust and dried oil, and stacks of half-finished weaponry sealed under layers of dust. This was no ordinary factory. This was a world built to feed the Imperium's endless hunger for war. As he moved, fragments of a broken language filled his mind, half-translated data from the slain priest's neural implants. Forge World, Viherian X, Subsector, Output Quota, Titan Chassis, Ordinatus Artillery Systems, Plasma Reactors, War Without End, Jin Woo murmured. Even the dead are forced to build weapons here. A faint voice whispered through the static, the dataco of the priest's dying thoughts, trapped in his still-active implants. The flesh is weak, the machine eternal. Jin Woo's hand brushed over a control panel. The symbols were alien, but his mind adapted quickly, interpreting function through rhythm and repetition. A holographic interface flared to life, displaying the forge's schematics and something else, an alert flashing red. Unauthorized anomaly detected. Dispatching purification unit, Skittery cohort 17. He exhaled slowly. So they're sending more. The shadows began to stir. Through their vision, he saw ranks of Skittery approaching soldiers of the machine god. Half human, half construct, their armor plated with holy steel and their weapons powered by reactor cores. They moved with mathematical precision, guided by a single directive: exterminate the anomaly. Jin Woo crouched beside the fallen, tech-pressed, and retrieved the data slate clutched in its mangled hand. The interface flickered, scanning him automatically. A surge of information flowed into his mind. Maps, tactical codes, restricted schematics. He felt his understanding of this world deepen with every pulse of the device. Then the floor began to shake. Metal boots thundered in unison. From the far end of the hall, beams of red light cut through the haze, converging on his position. Dozens of Skittery stormed forward, their voices raised in Banaric war chants. Jin Woo stood, shadows gathering like a storm behind him. He had fought monsters, kings, and gods. But this world offered something new, something impersonal, merciless, vast. He smiled faintly, the violet glow returning to his eyes. "Let's see," he whispered, "how your machines handle fear." The lights flickered. Shadows burst from every surface like black flame. The first Skittery raised their rifles, The war for Viharian Ix began. The manufactorum screamed as the shadows came alive. Steel pillars twisted under unseen pressure. Vox lines erupted into static shrieks, and light vanished as if devoured by a living night. The skittery advanced with mechanical precision, their optics glowing red through the blackness, targeting data cascading across their visors. Yet for all their discipline, their code could not comprehend what their logic declared impossible. The darkness itself could move with purpose, hunger and intelligence. Jin Woo stood at the heart of it, his gaze steady, his aura spreading outward in ripples. The air grew heavy, almost fluid, as though gravity itself bowed before the will of something ancient and sovereign. The first Scutarius raised his galvanic rifle, firing in a burst of perfect trajectory. The shot cut through the dark and vanished, swallowed mid-air. The soldiers targeting feeds scrambled. Then, from behind him, the shadow rose. A clawed hand emerged from the metal floor, dragging the Scutarius down with terrifying grace. No scream came, only the screech of armor grinding against steel. The rest of the squad opened fire in tight formation, their movements synchronized by binaric links, chanting fragments of the litany of purification. Red light seared through black mist, but the mist shifted like thought, bending around them, consuming muzzle flashes and silencing sound. For a moment, the war song of the machine god faltered. Jin Woo moved through them like a blade of night. His dagger glimmered with mana, invisible to augurs, but lethal to matter. Each strike was deliberate, efficient, the art of a man who had fought far too long to waste motion. Skittery fell one by one, their implants sparking as they died, their augmetics twitching like dying insects. The last of them turned his weapon, whispering a prayer to the Omnissiah in binary. Jin Woo's eyes met his through the visor. Your god cannot hear you here. The blow ended it. When silence returned, the air shimmered with residual energy. Jin Woo's shadows reformed around him, kneeling like loyal knights awaiting command. Beyond the hall, the distant rumble of heavy engines echoed reinforcements, larger ones this time. He could feel the tremor of tracked vehicles, the weight of mechanized bodies moving in formation. He exhaled, stepping through the carnage. His boots left faint trails of darkness on the metallic floor. The manufactorum's ceiling loomed high above, latticed with catwalks and cranes. Sparks drifted from malfunctioning power lines, raining down like dying stars. He found an open chamber at the far end, a shrine, or what passed for one in this world. At its center stood a massive effigy, a humanoid figure made entirely of machinery, crowned with cables and adorned with a dozen servo skulls orbiting its head. Its eyes glowed faintly blue, and within its chest burned a small, controlled inferno, a heart of Promethean flame. An altar lay before it, covered in mechanical components and dried blood. The worshippers here had prayed, not with words, but with sacrifice. Flesh offered to wire, soul offered to code. Jin Woo approached it slowly, feeling the ancient heat wash over him. The statue seemed to watch him, not through motion, but through intent. Something vast, distant, and cold was aware of him now. The machine god's gaze, or perhaps only the echo of its priest's devotion, brushed against his mind. It wasn't malevolent. It was indifferent. You are not of this system. A voice crackled through the vox grill above him, monotone yet heavy with authority. Identify or be purified. Jin Woo tilted his head. You'll find that hard to do. The ceiling shuddered. Heavy servitors descended from the rafters, suspended by cables, each one armed with mining lasers and powered claws. Behind them came the thrum of armored feet, Castellan robots, ancient constructs of the Adeptus Mechanica, their carapaces glowing with runes of function and faith. They landed with seismic force, and the floor cracked under their weight. Each was 3 times Jin Woo's height, their weapons trained on him, their voices reciting binary hymns of annihilation. Jin Woo's shadow soldiers tensed. His own heartbeat slowed. This was no dungeon boss. This was war, forged into ritual. He stepped forward, lowering his blade. "You built gods out of metal," he said softly. "Let's see if they bleed." The first robot fired. The beam struck and split, refracted by an unseen force. Jin Woo was already moving, his figure a blur between flashes of light. The shadows surged like a wave, colliding with metal giants, wrapping around their legs, climbing their armor. The Castellans fought back, their flamers roaring, turning the world into a blinding inferno. But shadows did not burn. The sound was apocalyptic, metal shearing, circuits screaming, voices of the machine choir dissolving into static. Amid the storm, Jin Woo's eyes glowed brighter than fire. His will extended, commanding the dead, the fallen. The broken dot, when the flames finally dimmed, only one figure remained standing, cloaked in black, surrounded by kneeling machines. Now bound to his will, Veilbound X would never forget this moment. It was the first time a shadow ruled a forge. The silence that followed was not peace. It was calculation, a stillness that waited, recorded, analyzed. Deep within the datanet of Veilbound X, the machine spirits screamed warnings across encrypted vox canals, their binary shrieks carrying a single phrase: anomaly ascendant, pattern heretical. Sung Jin Woo stood amidst the aftermath, surrounded by what had once been instruments of worship and death. The air smelled of ozone and molten alloy. His shadows had begun adapting. Their edges now shimmered faintly, stabilized by the alien energy that coursed through the forge world. They no longer fought the air, they breathed it. The fallen Castellan robots knelt like penitents around him, their optics dimmed but functional. They were not alive in any true sense, yet his will anchored them in strange obedience. They responded not as machines, but as subservient echoes, mechanical corpses resurrected through his dominion. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, Jin Woo felt something akin to satisfaction. His power was not gone. It had only changed its language. He turned toward the shattered gate leading deeper into the manufacturing complex. Beyond it lay a tunnel lined with steel ribs and glowing conduits, a corridor that pulsed with the heartbeat of the forge. His footsteps echoed as he walked, his shadows trailing behind him in silence, far above, in orbit. The response had already begun. The Margos Dominus of Veilbound X stood before a hololithic display, his silhouette draped in crimson robes heavy with augmetics. His voice was a cascade of layered static as he addressed the gathered Mechanicus Council. The anomaly defiles the Omnissiah's sanctity. It corrupts the machine spirit with organic will. It commands the dead metal as if by divine code. Another priest hissed in reply, mechanical lungs wheezing. Perhaps it is a sign, a manifestation of the Omnissiah's unrecorded aspect. Blasphemy, the Dominus intoned. No fleshborn may command the holy. Deploy the tech guard. Invoke Skittery Prime Thatanal. By decree of Mars, the anomaly shall be seized for sanctification or destroyed. The council's canticles echoed through the chamber, a digital prayer to cleanse the impurity below. Back in the depths, Jin Woo paused. The shadows whispered they had seen movement ahead. He extended his senses and felt the approach of soldiers, precise, deliberate, synchronized. Unlike the servitors, these were alive, their hearts steady but minds augmented with machine guidance. The skittery came in formation, their armor polished to mirror the crimson glow of the forge. Each carried a galvanic rifle and a data tether linked to the new spheric command net. They moved like one body, every step aligned, every breath measured. The first rank took position, while the second formed a semicircle behind them, locking the corridor. Jin Woo said nothing. The lead soldier, his armor marked with the sigil of the cog mechanicum, stepped forward. His voice came through a vox, grill flat, reverent. "Anomaly, you will submit. By the authority of the machine god, you are ordered to deactivate and surrender your control protocols." Jin Woo's expression was unreadable. "Control protocols," he repeated softly, as though tasting the words. "You think I am a machine?" The skittery's optics adjusted. "You are neither flesh nor data. The Omnissiah will determine your truth." A faint smile crossed Jin Woo's lips. "Then your god will be disappointed." The corridor dimmed as his power gathered. Shadows bled from the walls, thick and fluid, forming a storm that swallowed the skittery whole. Their sensors flared, their logic engines screaming warnings of impossible geometry. They fired disciplined volleys that shattered pipes and sparked fires, but their bullets struck only illusions, each shadow splitting into dozens more. Then the killing began. Jin Woo moved with effortless precision, his dagger whispering through steel and flesh alike. The skittery fought valiantly, reciting binaric hymns, even as their limbs were severed. Their neural augments tried to isolate his signal, to locate his true body. But he was everywhere and nowhere, an army within one man. When it was over, only one soldier remained, Prime That. His armor was cracked, his vox grill leaking static. Yet he stood upright, unflinching, his remaining eye blazing red. "Your code is wrong," he rasped. "You corrupt the logic of reality." Jin Woo's tone was almost gentle. "Then perhaps your logic is too small." Thatanal raised his blade, a crackling power sword humming with caged energy. "In the name of the Omnissiah, I will offer your soul to the Great Circuit." Their blades met. Sparks erupted like dying stars in that moment. Jin Woo understood something fundamental. This galaxy worshipped machines because it had forgotten the meaning of power. He struck once, the prime fell, his blade clattering to the floor. Jin Woo caught it before it hit the ground, the weapon humming in his grasp like a heartbeat made of lightning. He looked at its runes and smiled. "Then I'll speak your language." The forge answered in thunder. The forge world burned quietly that night. Towers of steel exhaled smoke like dying gods, and the air reeked of burnt oil and ozone. Sung Jin Woo stood on a bridge of molten iron, the new power sword still alive in his grasp, its edge whispering data chants as if reciting prayers to an absent deity. Beneath him, the manufactorum trembled. The machine spirits below had awakened, stirred by the unnatural resonance of his shadow legion. The corpses of the skittery were already gone. Their armor now housed his soldiers, animated not by augmetics or binary code, but by will. They moved differently with grace, not precision, a grotesque parody of the Mechanicus's perfect synchrony. Yet there was something hauntingly elegant about it. Each step they took was in rhythm with the hum of the forge. as though Jin Woo had written a new kind of logic into their veins. He could feel the world watching him. Voxreelers whispered across kilometers of steel, Usbeks arrays scanning, tech priests murmuring rituals of defense. The planet's noosphere shimmered with suspicion and fear, but deeper still, a flicker of curiosity. They did not understand what he was. They had seen demons, psychers, warp phenomena, but not this. Not a will that moved through shadow, untouched by the warp, yet unbound by physics. Jin Woo reached into the darkness beside him and drew out another blade, a twin to his first, woven from living shadow. He sheathed both at his sides, a quiet ritual of readiness. The forge lights flickered again. Something vast was moving below, gears the size of cathedrals grinding awake, cables hissing like serpents. Then came the hymn, a deep, rhythmic chant vibrated through the walls, the voice of thousands speaking as one. Jin Woo turned, and from the far side of the bridge came a procession, crimson robes, glowing augmetics, censer-laden staffs. At their center, carried upon mechanical treads, came the Magos Dominus himself. His face was a lattice of bronze and living metal, his mouth replaced by a vox grill that pulsed with digital fervor. Anomaly, the word rolled across the chamber like thunder. By the will of the Omnissiah, you will be redeemed or purged. Jin Woo regarded him calmly. You think your god fears me? The Magos' optics rotated, analyzing, comparing, failing. Fear is inefficient. You represent error, an unquantifiable variance in machine law. Jin Woo tilted his head, amused. Then quantify this. The shadows roared to life. From every crevice, from every vent, they poured his legion reborn in steel. The reanimated skitteries surged forward, their movements unpredictable, flowing like dark water instead of programmed soldiers. They struck with the precision of machines and the malice of men who remembered pain. But the Adeptus Mechanicus were not unprepared. Behind the Magos, massive silhouettes stirred Castellan robots, dozens of them, their heavy fists sparking with crackling energy. Servo arms slammed into place, plasma weapons charged, and the hymn of war began anew. The chamber exploded into chaos. Plasma fire lanced through the dark, carving glowing lines in the air. Jin Woo moved faster than the eye could track, shadows intercepting blasts, swallowing the light. He cut through the ranks with predatory grace, the power swords leaving trails of blue-white flame. The Magos raised his mechadendrites, releasing a burst of electrostatic discharge that shattered several of Jin Woo's shadow soldiers instantly. Sparks cascaded across the bridge. Illusion will fail before faith. Jin Woo's voice was a whisper, but it carried across the roar. Faith is what I use to bury gods. He leaped. The world blurred into streaks of motion and fire. He landed atop the Magos' dais, blades crossing before the Dominus' optics. Metal shrieked as he drove both weapons down, shearing through armor and circuitry. The Magos spasmed, binary screams bursting from his vox. Then silence. The moment his body fell, something changed. Every machine in the forge shuddered, not in protest, but in recognition. Their hymn shifted key. It was subtle at first, then overwhelming. Jin Woo felt it vibrate through his bones, a rhythm that aligned with his heartbeat, a chant that was not worship but obedience. The forge world had chosen a new master. For a moment, Jin Woo looked around at the flames, the broken automatons, the shadows kneeling in silence. He realized that this place, this brutal cathedral of iron and logic, understood power far better than most worlds he had conquered. Here, faith was simply control given structure. He turned his gaze upward, where the smoke parted to reveal a starless sky. "Then let this galaxy learn," he said quietly, his voice almost reverent. "Power doesn't come from gods. It makes them somewhere beyond the void." The Astronomicon flickered. Hours passed like the slow grinding of a great machine. The fires dimmed, replaced by the rhythmic pulse of newly aligned reactors. Jin Woo stood at the heart of the Forge world, surrounded by the quiet murmurs of awakening code and whispering shadows. The Magos's death had not gone unnoticed. Across the manufactorum, cogitators recalibrated. Binary hymns shifted tone, and in the deep datant work of Veilbound Chronicles, a new pattern began to propagate, a corrupted harmony, precise yet alien. He could feel it now, not through sight or sound, but through the strange resonance of his will. The planet itself was adapting to him. The machine spirits, ever eager for purpose, recognized something divine in his command, a hierarchy they could obey. It was not faith. It was logic surrendering to dominance. Jin Woo walked among the remnants of his new domain, the shadows moving with him like a silent court. The towering manufactorum gates bowed open, servos humming low hymns of submission. Skittery bodies, half flesh and half metal, kneeled in unison, their optics flickering in corrupted worship. He felt no pride, only clarity. In his old world, his shadows had obeyed because they feared nothing but him. Here, even machines, beings that could not fear, yielded. That was the difference between magic and faith, between code and will. Power was not an equation. It was inevitability. But inevitability attracts attention. From high orbit, the Imperium had begun to stir. A distress beacon from Veilbound Chronicles had escaped the planetary blockade seconds before the Magos's death. It carried with it encrypted data, fragmented images of Jin Woo's battle, the impossible readings of null psionic energy, the reports of the dead rising to obey an unknown command. The Inquisition heard it first, then the Adeptus Mechanicus of Mars, and finally the Adeptus Ministorum, the Church of the God-Emperor to the Imperium. There were only 3 possibilities: a demon prince, a Xenos manifestation, or a heretic godling. None could be allowed to exist. The first response came as light from the heavens. Orbital bombardment began, not in rage, but in liturgical precision. Lances of plasma fell from orbit, striking the outer manufactoria with the weight of sanctified judgment. Entire districts turned to glass and ash. Yet at the center of it all, the Forge heart endured, shielded by barriers, not crafted by the Mechanicus, but born from Jin Woo's will. The darkness rose to meet the light, and the sky burned black. He stood upon the highest gantry, cloak whispering in the furnace wind, eyes fixed on the falling fire. His expression was unreadable, not fear, not anger, only contemplation. His shadows moved to intercept each lance, absorbing, distorting, reshaping energy into harmless bursts that shimmered against the void. When the bombardment ceased, the Forge world was silent once more. The orbital fleet had paused, waiting for confirmation of annihilation. None came, only static. A new voice filled their vox networks, calm, deep, human. "Your faith burns bright," it said, "but fire without will is wasted." On board the command ship Omnissiah's Grace, the captain turned pale. That voice had not come from their channels. It had come from within their systems, Jin Woo's consciousness had spread through the planet's datanet, hijacking machine spirits, flowing through every line of code. He now existed not only in flesh and shadow, but in data, a presence impossible, unquantifiable. Down below, the forge engines flared once more. His Shadow Legion, now numbering in the thousands, stood ready beneath the iron spires. He looked out upon them, warriors of flesh, metal, and darkness, and for the first time since arriving in this galaxy, he allowed himself to imagine conquest. The Imperium was vast, endless, but so had been his old world. And if this place worshipped power through faith, then he would give them something new to believe in. As the first transport from orbit descended, carrying the banners of the Astra Militarum and the Inquisition, Jin Woo whispered to his shadows, "Let's see how they kneel." The forge lights flickered, as though the planet itself took a breath. The next war was about to begin, not between armies, but between the idea of gods. And in the distance, the Astronomicon pulsed once faint, uncertain, as if something in the Emperor's light had shivered. The sky of Viharian Ix was no longer a sky at all. It had become a bruise, a swirl of ash, lightning, and falling debris that turned day into a dim, rust-colored dusk. Orbital crafts screamed through the clouds, their descent trails like wounds carved across heaven's skin. The Imperium had come in force. Sung Jin Woo stood on the precipice of the main spire, a silhouette against the fire. The iron beneath him vibrated with the thrum of reactors now bound to his will. His shadows spread across the manufacturing plains below, thousands upon thousands of soldiers formed from his darkness and the dead of the forge world. Skittery, servitors, mechanicus adepts, all fused into a seamless host. Not human, not machine, but something new in the distance. Landers broke through the haze, disgorging waves of the Astra Militarum. Columns of tanks rolled forward, their treads grinding over slag and corpses. The Lemon Rust battle tanks led the charge, their cannons glowing red-hot, followed by squads of guardsmen reciting the litany of purity as they advanced. Behind them, towering silhouettes of sentinels scanned the terrain, their Auspex lenses gleaming cold blue dot. Then came the voice, loud, reverent, absolute. In his name we march. In his name we cleanse. Jin Woo watched, unflinching. The sound of faith was different here, a weapon disguised as devotion. The guardsmen were afraid, but their fear was organized, purified by belief. That made them dangerous. He raised his hand, and the forge answered. From the shadows poured his army. They moved without the sound of boots or breath, a silent tide of darkness that rolled down the iron slopes, consuming light. The first clash was sudden and absolute. Last fire cut through the gloom, the beams striking against shadow and vanishing like sparks into a storm. The air filled with ozone and screams. Jin Woo's shadows tore through armor and flesh alike, moving faster than any human I could follow. Yet the guardsmen did not break. Even as their ranks fell, their voices rose louder, singing hymns to the Emperor with cracked throats and trembling hands. The Astra Militarum did not fight for victory. They fought for meaning. That realization almost made Jin Woo pause. A burst of plasma struck him across the chest, bright enough to stagger even his form. He turned, eyes narrowing. From the horizon emerged a formation of Custodes dropcraft, descending like burning angels. The gold of their armor glinted even through the choking dust. Each warrior an avatar of the Emperor's perfection. The Adeptus Custodes had arrived. Their landing was silent, methodical. 20 warriors of the 10,000 stepped onto the battlefield, their guardian spears humming with restrained power. Each was a demigod, forged from the Emperor's own gene seed. Their every motion, both art and death. At their head strode Shield Captain Tyrion Vihal, his plumed helm reflecting the fires of the forge. His voice cut through the battlefield like a bell toll. By decree of the throne, the abomination that claims dominion here shall kneel. Jin Woo met his gaze across the war-torn plain, a single look between two predators. He felt the man's strength, not as a psychic aura, but as presence, a being carved from absolute purpose. "I don't kneel," Jin Woo said softly, and the words carried through the voxnet, as if whispered directly into every soldier's mind. The custodies advanced, and for the first time since arriving in this universe, Jin Woo felt something close to anticipation. These were not machines, not zealots. They were will incarnate, perfect, disciplined, radiant. As Tyrion Vihal raised his spear, the custodies ignited their jet thrusters, launching into the fray like golden meteors. Jin Woo leapt to meet them, his twin blades drawn, his shadows roaring beneath him like a living storm when they collided. The world broke. The explosion of power shattered the manufacturum towers, melting steel into rivers of light. The clash of Jin Woo's shadow blades against the Auramite spears sent shockwaves that rippled across the continent. Shadows screamed, gold burned, and faith met will. For the first time, Jin Woo bled. A single line of crimson traced down his arm, proof that these beings were not like the others. Tyrion Vihal landed before him, spear leveled, voice steady. "Whatever you are," he said, "you stand against the will of the Emperor of mankind." Jin Woo's smile was slow, feral. "Then tell your Emperor to come claim me himself." The sky cracked with lightning, and the war began in earnest. The storm did not relent. It only grew wilder, lightning licking the iron spires, thunder rolling through the broken manufactoria like a heartbeat of war. The world itself seemed to hold its breath as Sung Jin Woo and Shield Captain Tyrion Vihal clashed again and again. Each strike was a hymn in steel, each parry a sermon in blood and fury. Jin Woo's twin blades moved faster than thought, cutting through the air in arcs that blurred into shadow trails. Tyrion's spear met every strike with impossible precision, its golden shaft humming with the resonance of the Emperor's light. When their weapons met, the clash sounded like the toll of cathedral bells, echoing across miles of burning CITY-SCAPE around them. Armies died, custodies tore through shadows like gods walking among mortals. Each warrior fought as if the galaxy watched, efficient, elegant, relentless. Yet for every custodian that fell, 10 more shadows rose in its place, black silhouettes twisting into mockeries of their golden forms. The air reeked of ozone and hot blood, of burning faith and unrelenting will. Above, the inquisitorial flagship pennants of dawn loomed in low orbit, its vox grills broadcasting sermons of wrath. By his word, no heretic endures. By his light, no darkness stands. The voice of the preacher echoed even through the flames, filling dying men with the illusion of purpose. Jin Woo heard it, and something within him stirred, not anger, but curiosity. Faith was a strange weapon. In his old world, men had feared death. Here they embraced it, wrapped it in ritual, sanctified it, made it beautiful. Even as their bones shattered and blood boiled under his shadow, they believed themselves victorious. It was not courage. It was surrender shaped into devotion, Tyrion struck low, his spear grazing Jin Woo's ribs, sparks flying as its blade seared through his armor. Jin Woo spun back, shadows hardening into armor around his wound. He met Tyrion's gaze, saw no hatred there, only clarity. "You don't hate me," Jin Woo said, voice almost drowned by the storm. "You pity me." Tyrion's response came like scripture. "Hatred is waste. Duty is pure." Their blades locked again. Jin Woo twisted, forcing Tyrion back with a surge of shadow energy that fractured the ground beneath them. Cracks spread like black veins across the metal floor. The forge itself began to groan, as if the world could no longer bear the weight of their struggle. Then something shifted. A new presence entered the battlefield. Not from orbit, nor from the ranks of the Imperium, but from below. The ground trembled as the surface split open, molten metal cascading outward. From the depths emerged colossal shapes of living machinery. The dark mechanics, drawn by the signal of corruption, had come. Warp sparks danced over their twisted frames, half demon, half machine monstrosities chanting praises to the dark gods of Mars. Their leader, a thing of cables and bone and heretical sigils, raised its voice in blasphemous glee. The Omnissiah reborn in shadow. The flesh ascends. The Custodes turned instantly, forming a defensive line between Jin Woo and the new arrivals. Even Tyrion hesitated, caught between duty and confusion. For the Imperium, corruption was the only explanation, but Jin Woo was no demon. The heretic horde surged forward, a tide of metal and shrieking code. Plasma beams cut through the darkness, demonic limbs raked across the ground. The air became a battlefield of color, gold, black, and red, colliding in pure chaos. Jin Woo moved without thought. His shadows surged outward, devouring the nearest heretic constructs in a single sweep. He tore a war engine in half with a gesture, its molten core spilling out like blood. The Custodes glanced toward him, allies by circumstance, enemies by law. For a fleeting moment, neither side attacked the other. They fought back to back against the true monsters of the warp-tainted forge. Tyrion's voice cut through the din. "You fight the demonic." Jin Woo didn't look at him. "I fight anything that thinks it owns me." It was not alliance. It was coexistence, born of necessity. For hours they fought, until the manufactorum was nothing but ruin. When the last heretic fell, silence returned, heavy, unnatural. Tyrion stood opposite Jin Woo again, armor scorched, spear cracked, but his stance unbroken. He spoke softly, as though addressing something beyond them both. "The Emperor will know of you." Jin Woo sheathed his blades, his expression unreadable. "Then he'll know what's coming." And with that, the shadows swallowed him whole, vanishing into the broken forge as the Custodes watched, uncertain whether they had fought beside a man, or the birth of something new. The storm began to fade, leaving only the faint hum of machinery and the whisper of a single word in binary through the vox: "Rise." In the hours that followed, the fires of Viaharian Ix became embers, dull, smouldering veins running through the corpse of a world. The Imperium's fleets hung in low orbit, their sensors searching for the anomaly that refused to die. And somewhere beneath the surface of the Forge world, in the labyrinthine tunnels once meant for cooling plasma and storing sacred magic, Sung Jin Woo lived. He moved through the darkness like one born of it, his wounds already closing. The power within this galaxy still resisted him, not as opposition, but as friction. Every breath here came with weight, as though the universe itself questioned his right to exist. But that same defiance, only sharpened his strength. His shadows had grown quieter, more deliberate. The mass armies he once commanded were gone, reduced to a small handful of elites, fragments of his will that had survived the Custodies' onslaught. They followed him through the tunnels, silent, patient, waiting for his next command. He didn't speak for hours. The silence between him and them was complete understanding. They were extensions of him, his will given form, and for the first time since his arrival in this strange, brutal universe, he began to wonder, what if even the shadows could evolve? He could feel it, the way the warp's echoes brushed against his mind, probing him, analyzing. It wasn't magic, but something older, hungrier. The psychic hum of the Imperium was vast, alive, and it was watching him the way a predator watches another dot. Far above, aboard the Pennants of Dawn, Inquisitor Malrain Voss studied the data fragments recovered from the surface. The imagery was impossible. Footage of shadows devouring plasma, of soldiers falling and rising as something else, of Custodies reporting cooperation. He replayed the voice that had infiltrated the voxnetworks.com. Human and utterly confident. Your faith burns bright, but fire without will is wasted. He paused the audio and looked to his Summon the Ordo Hereticus and Mechanicus delegation. This world is not a simple heresy. His eyes, cold as stone, narrowed. This is evolution. Meanwhile, deep beneath the planet's crust, Jin Woo reached the central cooling core, an ancient chamber filled with suspended servitors and dead cogitators. The walls shimmered faintly with residual energy, the ghosts of millennia of work and prayer. He could feel their history like static, the endless devotion of men who had worshipped their machines, until even the machines forgot. They were once tools. He laid a hand upon the main conduit. The entire room trembled. The data sang to him in codes, prayers, screams, and his shadows reached into it, merging with the machine spirits. Circuits blackened, then flared with blue light. For a heartbeat, the Forge World's core linked directly with him, and in that instant, he saw everything, not just the Forges. The fleet above, the Inquisitors, the Custodies returning to orbit, and something else, far beyond, past the veil of mortal sight, the golden beacon of the astral. It burned brighter than any sun, its pulse steady, unending, but beneath that light, something trembled. A shadow cast by a dying god. Jin Woo's breath slowed. Even your light can bleed, he murmured. He pulled his hand back. The chamber darkened, the lights dimming to a whisper. Around him, the shadows began to take new shape, more defined, more aware. Their eyes glowed faintly with color, not just void black, but the metallic blue of the Forge's energy. They had absorbed the language of machines. He smiled faintly. Then let's speak to this galaxy in a tongue it understands. On the surface, every surviving Mechanicus signal lit up at once, fragments of corrupted data forming a single transmission that pulsed across the noosphere. The shadow engine awakens. Inquisitor Voss stared at the message, horror dawning across his features. Beneath the crust, Jin Woo turned his gaze upward. War is faith, he whispered. Let's see whose god answers first. The shadows stirred, not just his. The planet itself began to hum in response. Viharion Ix was no longer a Forge world. It was a living weapon. The void above Terra's edge shimmered with psychic fire. Astropaths across the segmentum solar screamed in unison before their voices were cut short by the Astronomicon, the Emperor's eternal beacon, had flickered. Only for an instant, a breath, but to the Imperium that instant meant everything in the sanctum of the Golden Throne. The Adeptus Custodes stood unmoving as the air trembled with the psychic wail of the Master of Mankind. He did not speak. He did not move. Yet something in the warp shifted, and a ripple passed across reality like a breath exhaled from a god too long confined, across the galaxy. Fragments of that pulse reached Vaharian IX. Sung Jin Woo felt it before any sensor did, a tremor that passed not through the ground, but through existence itself. His shadows stiffened. The living forge around him groaned like a wounded titan. The data spirits whispered in binary prayers, their codes suddenly unstable. The power he had absorbed from the planet's machines flickered, as though reacting to an opposing presence. "Something's watching," he murmured. He stood at the center of the reborn. Manufacturing the shadow engine, its walls fused from blackened metal and living circuitry. Every cog and servo pulsed with a rhythm synchronized to his own heartbeat. The fusion of shadow and machine had transformed the world into something neither human nor divine, but perfectly balanced between. He raised a hand, and a dozen spectral servitors materialized, their bodies woven from code and darkness. They knelt before him, awaiting instruction. But before he could speak, the air tore open with a burst of golden light. A spear struck the ground inches from his feet. It hummed with raw, burning power, the kind that unmade lesser realities. The gold shimmered not with heat, but sanctity. Jin Woo looked up, expression unreadable. A single figure stepped through the breach, radiant and terrible. Tyrion Vihal had returned, but the man who emerged was not the same. Shield Captain, who had once fought him on Viharian X, his armor now bore the sigils of Terra's direct mandate. The plumes on his helm were stained with ash, his aura heavier, anchored by the psychic command of the Emperor's chosen. Around him, golden light dripped like liquid flame, by decree of the High Lords. He said, voice cold as marble, "You have been declared anathema ultima. No demon, no heretic, no Xenos shall know greater condemnation." Jin Woo tilted his head slightly. "That's a long title for someone you can't kill." Tyrion's gaze didn't waver. "The Emperor does not speak idly. His eyes turned toward you. That is enough." Jin Woo stepped forward, the air rippling with each movement. "Then let him come himself. I'll kneel if he can stand." The Custodes lunged. The air shattered. Their clash was faster than thought, two wills colliding with the weight of entire civilizations behind them. Jin Woo's blades sang in perfect resonance, shadow and light merging into arcs of annihilation. Tyrion's spear met them each time, his movements precise, divine, unrelenting. Every strike carried the will of humanity's God. Every counterstrike defied it. The Manufacturum trembled under their duel. The shadow engine's conduits burst, releasing torrents of living data that screamed like dying angels. The shadows themselves recoiled from the Custodes' aura, unable to touch the golden flame that surrounded him. And yet, even as his armor cracked and his breath came sharp, Jin Woo laughed. It was not madness. It was understanding, he realized, in that instant, that this was not the Emperor's full wrath. It was a test. A measurement. Tyrion drove his spear forward, but Jin Woo caught it, mid-thrust, the weapon's holy fire bleeding through his hand. Flesh burned. He didn't let go. "You think I'm the shadow of your god," Jin Woo said, voice low. "But you're wrong. Your god is the shadow of mine." The light dimmed. For the first time, the Custodes hesitated. Something vast, unseen, an ancient, stirred behind Jin Woo's Izar, memory of death, rebirth, and the hunger that had devoured entire worlds. And then the Forge world itself began to rise. The planet screamed. Veilbound Ix, once a dead manufacturing world, tore itself free from inertia as if a will older than gravity had chosen to wake. The shadow engine pulsed in its core, its rhythm now aligned not with Jin Woo's heart, but with something greater, on unseen harmony echoing across the Imperium. Tyrion Vahar braced himself, driving the butt of his spear into the ground. Gold light spread like a shield dome, halting the rupture of metal and shadow. His vox grill flared with static prayers as he called to the throne, his words sharp, desperate. By the Emperor's breath, this cannot stand. And from the sky, the Imperium answered. Warships broke from warp space like bleeding stars, their hulls marked by the sigils of the Adeptus Mechanicus and Ordo Hereticus. The Lex Ultima led the fleeter warship whose vox chant could burn heresy from orbit. Servitors in low orbit whispered binary litanies, converting entire data streams into holy fire. But Jin Woo only looked upward, shadows rising like tendrils around him. They think they're cleansing corruption, he murmured. They're feeding it. The first bombardment fell. Promethean warheads struck the ground like judgment. The surface of Veilbound Ix fractured, molten rivers cutting through the ancient steel plains. Tyrion lunged again, trying to end this before the fleet obliterated them both. His spear struck through Jin Woo's chest, searing straight through shadow and flesh, and for one heartbeat, Tyrion believed it was over, but the world did not agree. The shadow engine's pulse spiked. The wound sealed itself, not by healing, but by consumption. Jin Woo's essence absorbed the light of the Emperor's weapon. The flames dimmed, their sanctity unraveling into darkness. Do you see it now? Jin Woo whispered, stepping forward until the spear cracked against the strain. Your light. It feeds the night, Tyrion roared, wrenching the weapon free and striking again. But this time the shadow met the light head on end. The light bent. The custodes stumbled. For the first time since his anointment, divine certainty faltered above them. The bombardment stopped. A presence, vast and formless, pressed against reality. Vox links went silent. The Mechanicus ships began to chant in voices not their own. Data streams collapsed into prayer, and the name of the Emperor echoed from machine to machine, overlapping with something else in another name. Ancient and unrecorded. Sung Jin Woo raised his eyes skyward. So, you're watching. For a brief moment, every shadow in the system froze, as if the galaxy itself had taken a breath. The Astronomican's light dimmed once more, and millions of psychers died screaming. The custodes fell to one knee knot in defeat. But reverence, he wasn't sure what he was kneeling to anymore. The Forge world split open. The shadow engine rose from its depths like a beating heart, dragging towers and entire manufactoria into its gravitational pull. Its surface shimmered with runes of light and darkness. Mechanicus data merging with unholy sigils Jin Woo had never seen before. It was neither demonic nor divine, neither warp nor matter. It was balance, the perfect coexistence of creation and oblivion. Jin Woo looked down at his hands. They no longer cast a shadow. The world's energy flowed through him, but not as dominion. It was recognition. You feared a monster, he said quietly. You should have feared evolution. Tyrion tried to rise, but the planet itself held him down. Not by force, but by reverence. The machine spirit of Veilbound Ix, the one that had served the Omnissiah for 10,000 years, had bent its will to someone else, to Sung Jin Woo, Shadow Monarch, reborn within the machine god's domain, and far across the warp, deep within the hollow stillness of the golden throne. Something old and broken smiled. It was not warmth. It was not mercy. It was recognition. The sky burned violet. The warp and real space began to blur along the planetary horizon, flickering like a failing hololith. The fleets above Viherian Ix could not withdraw. The gravity well of the shadow engine had grown sentient, dragging the ships into its orbit like insects circling a flame. Astropaths went blind. Servitors prayed in static. The Mechanicus Magi screamed praises and warnings that merged into a single blasphemous hymn, and at the center of it all stood Jin Woo, not as a conqueror, nor as a god, but as something terrifyingly familiar to the galaxy. A new axis, a point of balance. Tyrion Vehal, his armor blackened and his will fraying, staggered to his feet. Every movement was pain, yet the custodian did not falter. His duty was absolute, even before the impossible. His vox grill clicked open, his voice trembling for the first time in 1,000 years. "Tell me, creature," he rasped, "what do you intend?" "The Emperor does not permit equals." Jin Woo's gaze met his, and for a fleeting instant the custodian saw it. Not madness, not chaos, but a comprehension of existence itself. "Then he should stop watching," Jin Woo said, "because I am not his enemy. I am his echo." The words were not defiance. They were truth, unshakable and calm. Reality rippled again. The shadow engine's pulse matched the Emperor's dying heartbeat upon the throne, a synchronization that no mortal or demon should ever have been able to feel. The two forces, humanity's light and the monarch's darkness, reached toward each other through infinite distance, neither seeking to destroy, but to understand. For the first time in 10 millennia, the Emperor's dream, a galaxy unified in will, became possible, but it was fragile from the depths of the warp. Another presence stirred, vast, mocking, familiar. A voice older than the Imperium, older than terror itself, seeped through the seams of reality. A shadow pretending to be light. How quaint! Tyrion's eyes widened. That voice... Jin Woo didn't flinch. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his tone sharp, as though addressing an intruder in his own realm. The entity laughed, a sound that made the stars themselves dim. The shadows trembled, recoiling like frightened children. From the fissures of the warp came a silhouette crowned in impossible geometry, a being of pure hunger and paradox, a god of chaos, though which one could not be known. Its form shifted endlessly, wearing the faces of those Jin Woo had slain, the whispers of every monarch who once ruled. It was change itself, and it hated stillness. "You would bring order to Shadow," the voice crooned. "You would heal the wound between gods. No, you will feed me instead." The Forge World began to crack apart. Warp storms gathered, feeding upon the psychic tether between Terra and Viherian Ix. The Astronomican's light sputtered once more. A dying sun caught in an eclipse. Jin Woo stepped forward, his voice steady, his eyes burning with a light no longer human. "You misunderstand. I am not here to heal the wound." He raised his hand, and from the chasms below, countless shadows rose, an army of echoing souls, loyal beyond death. Custodes, Skittery, Orcs, even the flickering remnants of Necron constructs, all swallowed by his dominion, all reborn in harmony. Their forms shimmered like glass, held together not by hatred, but by singular will, I'm here, he said, to close it. The god screamed, a sound so vast it cracked the veil of the warp itself. The fleets above disintegrated. Vox links melted. But the planet held firm, not through strength, through balance. Light and dark, life and death, matter and void, all met in perfect stillness around Sung Jin Woo. Tyrion, V.L. His armor shattered and eyes filled with awe, whispered a single prayer. May the Emperor forgive me. And as the light consumed them both, Jin Woo smiled, not in victory, but understanding. The shadow was never the opposite of light. It was its proof.